high school electronics policy is that students will be expected to place their cell phones in a designated place before the bell. Students violating this policy will have an equipment confiscation and will be subject to disciplinary consequences that will have their parents retrieve their phone from the administration. The student's cell phone will result in the student losing their cell phone privileges for
A study was done at the University of Pennsylvania, and it showed that 69% of students reported that they texted in class, and students who texted or used Facebook more frequently in class had lower GPAs over the semester.
After the 1999 shooting rampage at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, many states began reversing bans on their cell phone and pagers in schools for safety reasons. Do you think the cell phone caddy is useful, and if so, how?
No, because no one puts their phone in the caddy, so not.
What do you think the rules for cell phones should be in school?
Not have it on your person, but like keep it in your bag or your locker, and just not be on it.
Do you think the cell phone caddy is useful, and if so, how?
Nope, not at all, because people are still going to use their phones.
What do you think the cell phone rule should be in school?
Just keep it in your pocket, I guess, and text after classes. So it's been applied since we started school.
Thanks.
What do I think of cell phone caddies, you ask? Well, I think cell phone caddies are pretty useless. Not a whole lot of people put their phones in the caddy anyways, so I mean, why do we even have them, you know?
Go.
I believe the phone caddy is useless to an extent. Most people don't put their phones in the caddy, but no one really does.
I think cell phone caddies are pretty useless. I mean, like 2 out of the 20 people in your class are gonna put them in there anyway. But I feel like if they have it in their backpack and it's off and they're not using it, it's not like a big deal. So do you think the cell phone caddy is useful, and if so, how?
I do think the cell phone caddy is useful because it gives a particular place where students should be putting their cell phones. And I have actually created a new cell phone caddy in my room, so then students don't need to feel like their cell phone's going to fall out of the caddy. And I think it makes it a little bit more fun, so maybe students want to put their phone in the caddy.
If there's any, like, what do you think about the cell phone law? Like, do you think there's anything that can make it better, anything that it should have?
I think that it makes sense for students to be held accountable for the fact that learning is what's supposed to happen in the classroom. And talking to your friends or getting on Snapchat or even reading the news or something like that is not what's supposed to be happening in the classroom at the time. And what we need to do is we need to create communities where we can have good discussions, but increasingly people are having a harder time communicating with each other because they're so reliant on cell phones to do it and not the face-to-face interaction.
Do you think the phone caddy is useful?
I do. I think the reason that we went to phone caddies in the first place was that idea of being able to disengage for the time that we want you to be engaged in your learning. And I think even when our phones are on vibrate, and even as an adult, I know I'm guilty of it, even if my phone is on vibrate, the tendency to look and check and see what's there, especially with smartphones and everything popping up virtually on the first screen. And I think the reality is, whether we want to admit it or not, even as adults, when we look at that, we're disengaging in what, you know, the learning is within the classroom. And so the biggest reason for going to the caddies is, you know, taking that disengaging or disconnecting for the 50 minutes that you're in class. I feel like we have a pretty liberal cell phone policy if you would compare us to the ESD schools. And I encourage you to go out and do some research. You know, look at the Brookings, the Hurons, the schools throughout that would be similar size to Aberdeen's, and look at their cell phone policies. And I think you'd probably find that we're much more liberal in the fact that we pretty much let you have them in school, except when we want you to be engaged in class. And that's why the cell phone caddies are there to, I guess, help you to disconnect for that time of learning.
All right. Do you think if we change the rules to where you can have them in class, that kids would get distracted?
You know, I think it depends on the kid. You know, I do think that there are some that we have some students who could disengage, who could put them in their backpacks and really disengage from them. The unfortunate thing, and too many of our students don't have that ability to disengage. We kind of live in the technical world where, you know, it's in our pockets, it's in our back pocket almost all the time. And so I do feel like we would have a lower level of engagement from students if we were to allow cell phone use during the 50 minutes of class.
Why don't the kids put their cell phones in the caddy?
You know, I that's a good question, and I hope that you do maybe a little bit of survey and to see why that is. If I were to guess, I do feel like, because I said before, we kind of live in that connected world, and you know, I don't know the extent of it, but I do think that there is that connection and that safety that some people feel to their phones. I don't think it's a healthy feeling. I don't think it's healthy for students to feel that sense of needing to be connected all the time. But I guess if I were to guess as to one of the bigger reasons, that would be my guess, is just the nervousness of not having that connectedness. I think there's some kids who honestly forget. But I don't. I guess you'd have to ask kids.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.